everyone. You're watching Dead Reckoning TV. I'm your host, Jay Friesen, with Dr. Brian Mattson. And all this month, we've been looking at how the world is foo, but not bar. And we're going to dive into that detail right now. Brian, Christianity is about rescuing the world to repair it.
Well, as we've seen, something's wrong with the world. And various worldviews take another number of options. They either resign themselves to misery, suffering, and death, or they just deny that it exists. And Christianity is fundamentally about a religion that doesn't deny it, doesn't resign ourselves to it, but faces it head on. God actually faces it and deals with suffering, misery, and death. So in Christianity, yes, it's foo, but it is not bar. It is not beyond all repair. Now, the repair of what's wrong with the world cannot come from within the world. We are twisted. We are sick and twisted people. We don't have the resources within ourselves to fix things. Whenever we try to fix things, we tend to mess things up, all right? Now, God, in his infinite love and compassion, says, I'm not satisfied with this world that I made, perfectly good and beautiful, that has been totally ruined and spoiled by sin. I'm not satisfied. I am going to do something about this. And this is just incredible. You know, God himself takes on human flesh in the person of Jesus Christ, takes on sin, misery, and death. He assumes it to himself, and he takes it all the way to the end, all the way to that bloody instrument of execution and injustice. You talk about injustice, you talk about a sinless man who never committed any crime hanging on that bloody cross, suffering wrath and justice from his Father. My God, why have you forsaken me? He takes it, he enters into this dysfunctional, foo world, and takes that all upon himself, and he takes it all the way to death. But that's not the end of the story. 3 days later, he is resurrected. He is raised from the dead. Christianity is not about averting our eyes from death. It's about reversing it. Reversing what is the problem with the world. And that's what Jesus fundamentally came to do, is to reverse the curse, to undo what our sin did. And so what we see in the death and the resurrection of Christ is putting an end to suffering, misery, and death, fully and finally on the cross, and then being raised from the dead and restoring the world, restoring us to what we were always intended to be. So no, we're not denying it. We're not resigning ourselves to it. We're facing it as an enemy. Death is the last enemy, the Apostle Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 15. We face death as an enemy. Jesus faced death as an enemy and rises from the dead and fundamentally conquers it. Christianity is not about checking out. It's not about pulling the ejection lever. It's not about playing harps on floaty, ethereal spiritual clouds. Christianity is about the restoration of human beings and the world to what God always intended it to be. Because there is something wrong with the world, and God wasn't satisfied with that. He himself suffered the misery, the suffering, and death, so that we will not ultimately have to. I've talked about a lot of worldviews, and one that I have not mentioned is Islam. Where does Islam fit in all of this with suffering, misery, and death? Well, here's something that Islam would never be able to affirm or say, and that is that God himself can be tainted with suffering or death. They believe that Jesus was a great prophet. You know that Islam does not believe that Jesus was really crucified. They think that's a myth. What a scandal that this appointed spokesman for God could ever suffer such a horrible, brutal fate, right? That's Islam. God does not dirty his hands with things like misery, suffering, and death. He's totally aloof. He is way above and beyond it. How different Christianity is that? No, God is not above it and aloof. God enters it, takes it on, faces it, and kills death at the end of the day. Wow. What a worldview Christianity is. Christianity is about grace. It's about forgiveness of sins. It's about peace. It's about justice, not in some abstract, ethereal afterlife. It's about the world we live in right now. Jesus has already brought in his kingdom in his resurrection, poured out his Spirit so that his people can Start to mend what's broken. Start to clean what is dirtied. Start to actually resolve the misery of this world. Christianity is very much oriented toward this world. We're not escaping it, we're transforming it. Jesus is transforming it. In the book of Revelation, behold, I am making all things new, Jesus says. What a powerful word. Behold, I am making all things new. Now, is it all completed here and now? Of course not. There's still suffering, misery, and death. But we do look forward to the day, to the return of our Lord who has been raised from the dead, when he will fully and finally conquer and overcome suffering and death. So Christianity really is the only worldview that faces it. It doesn't bury our heads in the sand. We don't think it's all in our brain. We think suffering's really real, and Jesus really deals with it.
Wow, thank you so much, Brian. That is incredibly encouraging. And next week, we're going to take it another step further with a special guest looking at extreme makeovers. Please email us at drtv@redfutonfilms.com. Subscribe to us on Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, Dailymotion, wherever you like to watch your videos, and share us with your friends. We'd love to hear from them as well. I'm your host, Jay Friesen. This is Dr. Brian Mattson, Senior Scholar of Public Theology at the Center for Cultural Leadership, and this is Dead Reckoning TV.